Today's webinar is presented by George Whittam, studio tech to the stars, educator, and father, located in Venice, California. George is a 1997 graduate of Virginia Tech with a bachelor's degree in music and audio technology and a minor in communications. Since 2005, George has dedicated his life to serving the technical need of voice actors, audiobook narrators, and podcasters. He is globally considered a top authority in voiceover recording technology. In August 2017, George launched George the Tech to assist anyone who records voiceover with tech support, training, studio design, and audio processing presets. Among his many successful clients are the late Don LaFontaine, Joe Cipriano, Tara Strong, Lori Allen, Randy Thomas, David Kay, and Scott Rummel. George is co-host with Dan Leonard of the webcast Voiceover Body Shop and co-host of the podcast The Pro Audio Suite. These webinars are designed to raise anyone's technical abilities to become comfortable and efficient while self-recording. The event is being recorded for replay at any time, so never worry about missing the smallest detail. And now, George the Tech Whittam.
Hey everybody, George the Tech. How's it going today? This is exciting. I'm a little bit nervous, even though I speak on camera all the time on my show. This is still a new thing, presenting solo here. Well, not really solo, but self-producing a webinar. And I'm really excited to do it today. And I'm not doing it alone, though. And I really want to make sure before I go any further, I get to introduce someone who's been in this business as long as I have, working in pro audio, probably longer, judging by the color of his beard. Just kidding. You'll see him in a second. We both are gray in the beard area. Durin's earliest interest in audio began around his age of 10, the tender age of 10, when he hot-wired a found CB radio to his parents' car battery. And instead of electrocuting himself, he found a world of weirdos and inspired an interest in how compelling sound can be. With a very brief stint in college radio, just as I did, and a few different internet startups, Durin eventually settled at Adobe over 16 years ago, helping design, build, and transition Adobe Audition from the old shareware application it started as into the digital audio powerhouse that it is today, and that it is. When he's not busy with all things audio at Adobe, Durin tries to spend a little creative energy on large-scale art installations with a sonic bent that you might have seen at events like Coachella, Burning Man, or Bumbershoot. Here he is. Thanks for joining us today. Good to see you, Durin. How you doing?
I'm great. Thanks.
Awesome, man.
Great introduction. Thanks so much. This is
Thank
exciting.
You. Yeah, it is exciting. It's really cool. So I wanted to, we're trying a new system today. There's no secret because there's a little watermark. It says Prezi. So that's one of the new things we're trying. So you'll notice some extra things going on that a Zoom presentation doesn't usually have. I wanted to make it a little more interesting. Thanks to my co-producer for this event, Firuza Kamyar. She found this tool and I was like, this morning I threw something together because I wanted to use it and make this more fun. All right. Yes, you're all muted in the chat, so all of you don't have to worry about being accidentally heard, as well as your cameras are off. So if this is a first time joining a webinar in Zoom for you, it's different from a meeting because of that. Your mics are off, your cameras are not there by default. So don't worry about being embarrassed and caught being heard when you didn't mean to. Cool. I'm realizing not everybody's actually done a formal webinar thing in Zoom. So let's get to it. What we're going to be covering today, and Durin's going to be helping out more at the beginning because I want him to show some of the new features and kind of get people oriented with how you get started even using Adobe Audition nowadays. It's not just a shareware app that it used to be. So I'd love his help in presenting that. But we'll be covering the following topics. We're going to have an introduction to the Creative Clouds, so you understand what it's about and what it can do for you. We'll talk about getting a demo of Adobe Audition if you're not ready to plunge head forward into paying, or just getting started with paying. Installing Audition, just a little brief overview. We don't need to spend a lot of time on that. I just wanted to make sure if there's any tricks that Durin knows, he might share it. What's new in Adobe Audition 14, also known as 2021? He might shed a little light on why there's two different model names or numbers for the software, because that can be a little confusing sometimes. Using Audition in Rosetta mode. Again, this is a Mac thing, but it's something that everybody with a brand new Mac using the M1 chip might need to know about. And we'll explain what that means and why it'd be helpful for you to know. Configuring your audio hardware to use with Adobe Audition. And we'll try to answer questions for the Windows users as well, because there's differences from Windows and Mac in that area. Other helpful settings in the preferences section. There's a ton of settings. We won't be going through it setting by setting, but we'll just look at the quickie ones that I think would be helpful for you, for what you guys are doing. Learning the user interface, just understanding how the workspaces thing works, how you can customize and move things around. And sometimes that's a little unintuitive at first. So we'll give you a demo of how the workspaces can be modified to your liking and just making it more productive. You don't have to see absolutely every single window available to you. You can see what you just need to see to get work done. There's more. We're also going to cover, of course, the Waveform Editor, which is where the vast majority of you are going to spend your time. We'll touch on what the multi-track editor is. What is it for? What do you do with multi-track? Handy keyboard shortcuts that are really useful, and how you might make your own very quickly. This is a lot, so we're going to move fast. Trust me. You're going to be rewatching this video several times. Recording audio and setting levels with the meters. I got cut off. Sorry. Basic editing tools. Just how you edit in that waveform mode. Is there multiple tools? How do you do it? A special trick that I usually save for advanced, but it's so good and so powerful, I can't save it, and that's called mix paste. And why that's incredibly helpful for those editing voiceover in a waveform editor, and why it's just I feel like it's the editor's secret weapon. We'll talk briefly about the effects rack, what it does, and then lastly, ways that you would save files, what different file formats are commonly used, what might be unique on a Windows system. That's where Durin can probably help fill me in, is what of those formats are unique to Windows systems from the Mac side. So that's a lot of stuff. So let's just plunge head first and get right to it. So let's go to a little introduction to Adobe's Creative Cloud. So Durin, whether you want to share your screen at this point or just kind of give us a little rundown, it's up to you. But tell us a little bit about the Creative Cloud, what it's doing other than just creating a subscription that people pay monthly. What benefits are there, and what can they do with it, and what do they need to know to get started?
Yeah, I'm happy to do both. Well, I'll just start by saying that Adobe Creative Cloud is more than just a single piece of software. So certainly you can go and get a membership for just Audition or just Photoshop. But kind of the power of Adobe has always been the interoperability of all the applications and all the services and things that we offer. And the reality of the situation for most people these days is they're not just creating audio, or they're not just creating images, that they're developing, even for voiceover, you're developing imagery for your brand, for your portfolio pages. If you're producing podcasts, you're doing album art, you're doing video that goes along, because if you're publishing to YouTube requires you to have a video element when you publish your podcasts, and it's the biggest platform for podcast consumption. So Creative Cloud is really all those things, and it's really something you can draw from. So as you grow in your needs and as you grow in your experience. As you can see, if you just go into adobe.com and looking at Creative Cloud, there's a list of applications, but you can kind of dive in a little bit more and learn a little bit more about what each of the applications do, watch tutorials, and take advantage of some other services that are around here. So like I said, it's not all applications that have to be installed on your hard drive or on your computer. There's web applications and mobile tools There's for all different ranges of skill levels. So you don't have to come in being this expert at design and graphics and imagery. You can start with something like Adobe Spark, or what's being called now, what's being rebranded as Creative Cloud Express. And it's simple, even a lot of them even free, or at least free tiers of design tools to just quickly develop those, flyers and advertisements for services and social media posts and all of the things that we need to use these days to really, sell ourselves and make ourselves stand out. But it's also social platforms like Behance, which is a sort of a social network / portfolio site for creators. And while it does tend to have a more illustration and photography slant, you can certainly come in and search for, say, voiceover. And we get a lot of voiceover artists who are sharing their content, examples of their, material being used, their voices being used for commercials and UI designs. And so it's really a platform for not only promotion and selling yourself, but also potentially finding people who are interested in what you're doing and reaching out to potentially make some new contacts and network a little bit more.
So can Creative Cloud also be a place to store files or products you're working on?
Absolutely. So, there's cloud storage, just like you would have with Dropbox or any of these other third parties. And typically those were the Adobe cloud storage is integrated a little bit more deeply into the application. So you're still free to use Dropbox or Microsoft or Google or whatever Drive or whatever you like. But the Creative Cloud storage makes it a little easier, and it makes it a little easier to be able to share and collaborate in the cloud space through these applications without having to jump through a bunch of hoops.
That's what I was curious about, like the collaborative effect. Like if you have a client that you're doing voice work for, maybe they're doing video presentations or slideshows, that you could now more tightly integrate your production flow into theirs. Like, how this whole business is. It's about you as a voice actor are fitting you're a cog fitting into this giant machine, right? And you want to be the cog that doesn't make noise, never gets stuck, doesn't need grease, and sometimes you as the performer can even educate your client that you're capable of doing certain things that they may never have thought of. So That's awesome. Let's skip on because there's so much to cover. It's insane. Yeah. Let's get on to, so once you're in the cloud and you have an account, purchasing the software, you just click, let's say you want to start as a demo. Where would you start next?
Yeah. So, I went to adobe.com and I searched for Audition, or I clicked down into the video and audio and found, there's the audio application. And here, it's a typical kind of sell page. We're showing what is it, what's it do, how do you do a couple little product demos, videos with a big, lots of buy now buttons. But really, you can, we offer free trials of all of our software. So you can, if you're not sure, you want to try something out, and you only need a day or two to get in there and do something to see if this is something you're interested in. You can always pop in, download it. It's the same application. We don't disable anything, with the rare exception, and not in Audition, but in some of the other applications, of certain royalty-bearing codecs that we have to pay for.
Gotcha.
But generally, it's fully featured the application. You can save it, you can reopen it, you can export. We're not blocking you from anything. And while it does expire after a few days, I think that resets every 6 months or every 12 months. Don't quote me on that. But if you try it out now and you let it simmer for a year, and you're like, oh, do I really want to? And you can try it again and convince yourself that, yeah, that was the right decision. Or you can just go right in there. And then once you're in, it won't work because I'm not on the VPN right now. Once you're in, you're a member. You basically, there's a desktop application that you don't have to go to the website anymore. You can update and search for applications, find tutorials, sync. If you're doing design and layout, you can browse and sync fonts, from the Adobe library to your system, and search for stock imagery or stock music if you need some extra content for what you're doing, and even try out our beta app, beta versions of our applications. So if you don't want to wait for 3 months or something before something's released, but it's in that beta, you want to try it out now and give us some feedback, we make those available to anybody who wants to try them out. That's
what I wanted to say something about that. For someone like myself who has to support legacy versions of software, meaning old ones. I can have, and I love this about Audition, I can have multiple versions installed alongside each other. So when you install a new version, it will ask you if you want to keep the prior one. Is that right? So something to that effect.
Yeah, you in the one of the settings is, wipe out all my old versions and just have a new version. And you can have that as your default if you'd like that. For those of us who tend to, need to either do troubleshooting or are a little less risk averse and want to make sure that we have access to what we used to have before, you can keep them installed. You can migrate your old settings. So any presets and shortcuts you might have done in an old version can be imported into the new version when you install it. So it's kind of
that's a big deal. So when you upgrade and add another version, do the preferences, like let's say, for example, I make racks, tons of racks for folks, and they're stored in like this XML file, I believe, right? When you install that next version, does that rack, those XML files automatically migrate to the new version?
You get prompted, hey, do you want to, we see there's an old version. Shall we import the old settings?
Always say yes, everybody.
If you say yes, they come in. If you don't say yes, then you're going to be visiting a website and following some other instructions. But
okay,
if you say yes, they'll come in.
Cool. Awesome. Great. Well, let's talk. Is there any gotchas when it comes to the actual installation process, or is it pretty seamless and the same on Mac and Windows?
It should be pretty seamless. So the fact that Adobe has their official Creative Cloud desktop app allows us to build that same experience on whatever platforms we want to. So the look and feel of installing and even launching is pretty similar between both applications.
Okay, great. Now, this might be the time, and I don't know if I put in the right sequence in our slideshow, but let's take a look here. Let me jump around and jump forward to this slide, and then we'll go back. I would have put this one first, I think.
Yeah, you got it.
What is this? What is this Rosetta mode, and why should we care? So if we're the folks who love trying new things and couldn't resist buying the new Apple Mac Silicon M1 Max, which Durin and I did, what is the Rosetta mode, and who should care?
So Rosetta, the new Apple has built all their new systems are coming out with a chip that Apple built. So it's not built on these old Intel CPUs anymore. And that's generally a good thing because they're just blazing fast. They're really, really good, and they're cheaper than it was for the old Intel chips. So they're more cost effective. They're faster. They're more powerful.
Quieter too.
So much quieter.
I have my hand on my Mac Mini right now. You can tell it's on because it's a little warm, but it's not making a peep.
There's no sounds.
No noise.
But that does mean that there are some things that were built around the Intel ecosphere or the Intel architecture that didn't come across, that don't run natively on the Mac chips, the M1 chips. And so if you have an application, a Mac application that is compiled to run on the new chips, you can still fall back and have it be emulated on the Intel chips. The emulator is it's pretending it's an Intel chip to the application, so it can still use all these old Intel calls. There's a small performance hit because it's running through this emulator. Honestly, in my own personal experience, I found the emulated versions of our apps were running better on the new chips than the native versions on the old systems. So
isn't that interesting? It's amazing that you can emulate an old computer faster than the old computer could run itself.
So you can, if there's, and to be fair, so Audition launched a fully released ARM M1 compatible release back in our May release, and but there are some things that don't work on the ARM yet, either because we're waiting for partners to upgrade their drivers, say like Avon, the Yukon drivers, if you're using those control surfaces, a couple of commercial video codecs, as well as CD burning. Our CD burning libraries weren't compatible.
I also know that a lot of third-party plugins aren't there yet. So Isotope and Waves, which are probably arguably the biggest, most popular plugin. They're so if you go and install Audition and you want to use it for the first time and you're used to using those plugins, you'll want to put it in Rosetta mode for those plugins to load and operate for the foreseeable future. So just so you know about that.
Yeah, I'll show you how to do that really quick. So if you
Cool.
bring up your Finder on Mac, obviously this doesn't apply to Windows. You guys can get a quick nap. Click on
We'll keep it quick.
Applications, and you'll see Adobe Audition 2021. If you open that little folder, you'll just have the one. I've actually made a duplicate called Rosetta that's defaults to Rosetta for testing. You won't need to do that. You'll just have the one here. You can right click on it or control click and choose Get Info. And that'll pop this little window up here. I'll bring it right in the center of the screen. And you'll see one of the options right here, open using Rosetta. That'll just, next time you launch, that will force it to go through the emulator rather than use the native CPU support. For the most part, I think for most of what we're talking about here, it's not going to be necessary. But if you see a problem, if you run into something weird, it's worth maybe trying it in Rosetta mode just to see if you see the same problem.
Got it. All right, cool. Well, let's get to some more juicy stuff. And that is, what are some of the new things that maybe didn't come out in the last update, but even in the last few updates?
Yeah,
we know there's been a couple updates since the 2021 came out.
Yeah, I'll show you a couple quick things here. One that was a big deal was strip silence.
I've heard of this term, but I want to see how Adobe Audition does it.
We've had something similar here in Waveform View for a long time, but it was delete silence. So if you were to open the diagnostics panel and choose delete silence, you can scan and I'm using this in the thing, that's fine, and get rid of all the silent bits. So any of the gaps will just disappear. Now your timing is going to change, the sync is going to change, but if there was, moments where you just kept it running and walked away and then came back, you can get rid of all of that. And you can customize, you can scan the file to have it find the right levels and the right settings. You can adjust what it thinks is silence and what it thinks is audio based on, what the signal level, how the duration of that event. And all of that's pretty cool. But we never had it in multi-track. So if you just had one recording, it was fine, no problem. But if you had something like an interview or a back and forth where you had, one person speaking and another person speaking, you might want to be able to cut out each of those little odd sound bites into separate clips. So you can manipulate, you can rearrange things, or maybe you can nudge something for timing. Or
that could be really huge for e-learning.
Exactly.
Where you could record a whole bunch, instead of hitting record, stop, save as file name, record.
Exactly.
Like I could just sit there and go cow, bread,
and
fish.
If you're doing it to video or like a screen capture or something, if you're doing a VO or a narration to something that's already been recorded, doing it in multi-track is really the only way to have the video play while you're recording and watching and reading.
But even if you have no video, I think a lot of the VO, they just are given a script with here are the 117 prompts or 1,357 prompts.
Yeah.
I need you to record all individual words or phrases. It's a tedious process. I see that this possibly could be a huge time saver, that they could just record and go for it and then let Audition split them into files, right?
Effectively, yeah, sort of. What we're doing is not splitting them into files. In this view, everything's non-destructive. So in this case, if I was to say, clean up this podcast interview, I could scan the files and say split all, and it will just chop, chop, chop. It'll do the effect of taking a little razor tool and splicing all of those things.
Cool.
Or I can say strip silence, strip all, and it'll just get rid of them. And now I don't have to, in this case where I have two audio tracks or two separate tracks, I don't have the background bleed or the background noise of one person who's not speaking, maybe interfering with the other. And then, but this also, even if you were doing something like a single recording, if I got rid of this whole track, let's say, we'll just get rid of it and look at this one. In the example you gave, I can now still kind of come in and make some slight timing adjustments, or, trim this out a little bit if I wanted a little bit more, bring this back and kind of, I wouldn't have to necessarily have had my diction and rhythm perfect. If I got a little bit off, I can quickly kind of go in and just nudge it a little bit. Where in waveform, it's sort of more
constrained.
Yeah, constrained. Exactly.
Got it.
So that's strip silence. There's certainly going to be different use cases for a lot of folks, but we really wanted to bring that into this for a lot of our podcast and voice community.
Very cool. What else pops into mind? I know I found a few that I was interested in, but I'm looking for that note here.
Get those notes. So one of the things we brought in is it's a new loudness meter. So in the past, we've had a meter that was licensed from TC Electronic, who makes a lot of plugins, makes a lot of hardware gear, had a really great meter, isn't compatible with the M1 chip. Mm-hmm. And frankly, we wanted to be able to do a little bit more with it. So these are passive meters. They don't affect the loudness of your recordings at all. But if you get specs or QC charts for different deliverables, you need to be sure you're in the right loudness range. It used to be in the past, we were looking at, or you're normalizing to a certain decibel peak and your RMS has to be blah, blah, blah. And it was, for a lot of people, that was just really confusing or really prone to error. What loudness does is it kind of takes a measurement of volume over time. So it's an averaged out, and the algorithm focuses more on the frequencies that we hear most and takes less into account the frequencies that aren't as audible. So the old way of normalizing, if there was a big, really high pitched chirp that maybe was too high for at least people of our age to hear, or somewhere there was a clap in that big spike, that could throw the level of everything off. Well, with loudness measurement, that will not, because it's an average, and so that little spike or that little chirp won't throw everything off dramatically. Mm-hmm. So really, again, this is a passive meter. I tend to put it on either a master, or if I'm working in waveform view, and I just want to make sure something I've done, if I'm adjusting levels or doing an edit, I may just throw it in at the bottom of an effects rack, keep it up on screen, and while I'm in playback, I don't know if you play it off, but you can start to see. So, and how we've got this set up is typically what people or what deliverables need to be is this integrated level right here. That's, you'll get something that says, if you're publishing to Spotify, it needs to be -14 LUFS, this loudness unit measurement.
Wow, really? It's that loud? Whoa.
Spotify likes it loud.
That's pretty loud.
There's no subtlety over there.
Yeah.
But everybody's got a little different. So we added a bunch of new presets for publishing to Apple, for publishing to YouTube, to Netflix, all of the European and North American standards for broadcast. For voice, this is maybe a little less critical, although you can certainly, while you're recording, you'll have your level meters down here, which is the real-time kind of decibel-based meters. But you can keep this up and just kind of make sure that as you're talking or as you're mixing and adding effects, that you're staying in that range, that as you hit play, again, it's a real-time kind of passive meter. So just over time, you'll see if you start drifting out too loud or too quiet, and can make some adjustments there.
It's funny, in the voiceover world, we're still waiting for there to be standards. There are certain clients may have a specific thing they want. Audiobook world sort of has a very specific LUFS or RMS range, but so much of it is not really standardized. So we're trying to figure out what that's going to be. I've done some polling, and I'm seeing a lot of people say around -20 RMS, or now we're calling it LUFS, loudness units full scale. I think. Yeah, so we're seeing that more and more, but it's slow to take. So
it's still very nerdy, but hopefully LUFS is a little softer and friendlier than RMS.
Right, root mean squared. Yeah.
The other thing you can do. So we've been talking now about how to that this is a passive meter. If you've recorded something and it's and you like you like any dynamics, the up and downs, you like the overall presentation, and you just need to make sure that final product is going to be given the approval by whatever the platform is or the client is, you can use the match loudness panel here, open that up, and then just drag your files in. They can be from the files, but they can be from Finder, wherever you want. And what this does, you can hit match loudness settings. It will let you adjust in batch, like all at once, en masse, all of the files, so that it will do a nice subtle adjustment such that every file will be legal or measured properly for that destination. So
that is a hugely helpful tool that I'm now using for audiobook production. mostly, but I'm sure we'll be using it more and more for other kinds of voice work. And I'm going to get into that in a lot more detail in our advanced Adobe Audition class.
I'll just
month.
show it off really quick on the screen.
Awesome.
And then I'll say, but tune in for more.
Exactly.
Tune in later for more.
It is pretty amazing. That's fantastic. Is there one last one before we move on?
Yeah,
and we're getting a ton of questions in the chat. Make sure if there are questions for me and Durin, put them in the Q&A box. That's where we're going to be looking later on to catch all your questions. So sorry, go ahead, Durin.
No, that's fine. So there was just one more thing I definitely wanted to share, and that was something that came up in the chat before we started. And it's a feature we called Insert Record Mode. You might see it in other applications like Ripple Insert or something like that. And what that does is, let's say, I can't hear that anymore. Can you guys hear that okay?
No, but we're seeing the meter. We can see what's going on.
It's a very visual feature here. So when you're recording in waveform view, it's a very linear process. If I wanted to add something I forgot to record here, maybe a line that needs to be added, I might have to come and insert a bunch of silence, and put 10 seconds in and hope that I didn't record more than 10 seconds and then trim off anything unused. Or I'd come to the end here and I'd record it back here, then I'd cut and I'd paste it in. But now we offer the option, if you right click or control click or option click on your record button, we offer insert mode. Normal overwrite mode, if at this point I had my playhead here and I was just hit record, I'd start recording over my old stuff.
Like an old tape deck.
Yeah, just exactly the same. Now what we do though, is I choose insert mode and I start recording, we'll just push everything else forward. So insert mode inserts new recording where the playhead was. And this works with punch and roll mode as well. So if I have that set and I'm here and I hit record, we'll have that pre-roll. I'll be able to, either recite along or listen to it and move in smoothly and cleanly with the new audio. So
I know some people love, if you're going to do a punch and roll style recording in waveform mode, there are definitely people that prefer this because it means that they're never losing anything. The original audio is just pushed aside. And for some folks, they really prefer to work that way. There's also punch and roll and multi-track, which we'll get into in another presentation. But it's just nice. You guys are obviously listening to the users. Where do you get the most where does your development team get the most feedback about adding new features? And where do you most often listen to the users? There's
a couple places. So I do a lot of hunting around different Facebook groups, around typically voice creator communities. We have the Adobe Audition subreddit if you're a Redditor. If you're in the application and you want to suggest a new feature or you're running into a bug that you want to report, you can click help, provide feedback, and that will take you to a website called User Voice, which is set up for sending application specific feedback and requests. And you can search there. If you see it's already there, you can upvote, add a comment. So we try and pull a lot from those sources, as well as whatever the other criteria and places that we have to source are.
That's pretty amazing. Because I think a lot of places are like, oh, you got to vote on it in this one place, so we're never going to know about it. But you're out there spidering all the different.
Try to be. It's not always easy, but I try to be everywhere at once.
Yeah, well, that's how I don't know if I know you more from the Facebook group or from seeing you at NAMM and the music trade shows, and I've seen you at both, but I see you pop up in the Facebook group that I'm in, and that's just great to see you out there just integrating with the users like that. It's really, really helpful.
For my role, I'm the voice of the customer. I'm the advocate for users. So if I'm not there, then no one's speaking for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Durin, I appreciate it, man. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to try to railroad through a whole bunch more info now that I have in my queue. Are you able to hang out and maybe be here for Q&A at the end?
I'll hang out and I'll mute, and you call me if you need me. Otherwise, I'll just hang out.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks.
Durin, everybody. All right. Let's move on into